esta hora acaban de golpear y lanzar un objeto explosivo a la Guardia Nacional.
¿Estás bien?
Violence in the streets of Venezuela in protest of President Nicolas Maduro's controversial vote Sunday to elect a legislative superbody that would have the power to rewrite the constitution and give sweeping authority to his ruling Socialist Party. Voters trickling in as opposition parties boycott what they call a rigged election, clashing with government security forces. Reuters correspondent Girish Gupta is in Caracas.
And here in Caracas you can see youths mainly in balaclavas setting fire to trash. They're putting roadblocks up. The city has essentially come to a standstill, as has much of the country. But turnout, however, is not that big across the country, and that's bad news for Nicolas Maduro. Actually, just 2 weeks ago, the opposition held an unofficial referendum, which didn't mean anything, but symbolically was huge. And they showed 7 million people, they said, who did not support today's events.
The election, part of Maduro's plan to revitalize the OPEC nation that has spiraled into political and economic turmoil under his watch. Maduro promising peace after voting Sunday. His proposed Constituent Assembly could not only dissolve the opposition-run Congress, but delay future elections and prevent Maduro's party from being voted out of power. Global condemnation of the election mounting, the U.S. already sanctioning 13 socialist leaders in the country, with Washington threatening further action.
President Donald Trump of the United States threatened sanctions, big economic sanctions against this country if it went ahead. Economic sanctions could really cripple this country if they go ahead. This country is massively suffering. People are earning maybe $10, $20 a month. There are shortages of everything, the most basic foodstuffs from pasta to rice to chicken. Millions of people are suffering from food shortages and they're extremely angry.
Neighboring country Colombia also saying it will not recognize the results of Sunday's vote. Maduro's Constituent Assembly is expected to sit within 72 hours of being certified, with many seats expected to go to government loyalists and relatives.
¡Nos va arriba! Claro, fotografía.
An extraordinary journey inside a country on the brink of an economic collapse. Venezuela's once thriving middle class is now trapped in desperation, struggling to put food on the table, some even dying from simple infections due to a lack of basic medicines. Our Matt Gutman traveled to Venezuela for a rare first-hand report from inside this repressive authoritarian regime.
Venezuela, a tropical paradise steeped in natural riches, sitting atop the biggest oil reserves on the planet, once oozing glamour and excess, known for its beauty queens, black gold, and its authoritarian rulers. But now it's a country in the midst of violent upheaval. When the price of oil crashed, the economy went with it, exposing the failures of Hugo Chávez's socialist government, triggering hundreds of riots and mass instability. And now the people are paying the price. I traveled to Venezuela twice before, but this time, from the moment we arrived, we saw people rising up.
Freedom, please! Freedom! Freedom!
There are probably a couple of thousand people who have overtaken this highway. Is life harder for you now than it was?
Yes. There's no food, there's no quality of life here. We cannot go to the streets at night.
She tells us under the current president, Nicolas Maduro, the descent into chaos has accelerated. Caracas is now the murder capital of the world.
It's a humanity fight, it's not a political fight.
Lilian Tinturi is an opposition leader here.
Do you think Maduro is ready to give in?
Maduro is a dictatorship. He needs to go.
Are you prepared for confrontation if it has to happen?
I don't want confrontation.
Lilian has paid dearly for speaking out. Her husband has been a political prisoner here since 2014, imprisoned under Maduro. Maduro rules with an iron fist, hauling opponents off to detention and silencing the press, at times violently. Food lines have to be guarded by soldiers, and they tell the story of the world's worst performing economy with inflation over 800%. But shockingly, Venezuela's leaders deny it even exists.
No hay crisis humanitaria. No la hay. Lo afirmo con total responsabilidad. No la hay.
But when you talk to the people here, there is no denying the crisis is real. Food shortages pushing some people to ransack food trucks. We met up with second grade teacher Vanessa, and she invited us into her class. She tells us that some of her students have fainted from hunger.
No comen, expresan que están agotados porque ese día se pararon en la madrugada con su mamá a ir a hacer cola, no se concentran en las actividades, ya sea por hambre, fatiga.
Just milk. These kids aren't asking for candy or fast food.
Leche. Y dime, ¿cuánto hace que no tomas leche?
When the food began to vanish, so did Vanessa's students. The upturned chairs on the desks, an unofficial roll call. But it's not just the students.
Anoche yo me acosté prácticamente sin cenar. Y él sí cenó, pero yo no.
More than a third of the country's teachers miss school every day so they can stand in lines like these, hoping to buy the staples they need for their own children at a much cheaper government-subsidized price. Sometimes they have to wait for hours and get nothing at all. Vanessa and her husband Adolfo are two of the few teachers that, despite the journey, work every day. It's a 2-hour hitchhike and a bus ride to and from school. They had to sell their car to survive. Vanessa and Adolfo have to alternate eating dinner on different nights to make sure their son gets to eat every day. The meals missed have taken a toll on their bodies. just a morsel of cheese brings a smile to their young son's face.
Es el ingrediente secreto.
Sí, ya vi que es el ingrediente secreto.
Le puedo comprar 100 gramos de queso parmesano. Más nada. Que el dinero no me alcance ni para comprarle al niño. Nada. Puedo gastar 4.000 bolívares en 200 gramos, 100 gramos, algo así. Es lo que puedo gastar.
With inflation, the equivalent for a U.S. family would be $400.
No comemos como tenemos que comer, pero algo tenemos en la mesa. Así sea un pan con mantequilla o una arepa sola, pero la tenemos pues.
Teachers here need to earn 16 base salaries just to adequately feed a family of 5.
Y lamentablemente que ahora que uno es padre y yo quisiera que lo que yo viví,
lo que uno vivió,
que él también lo viviera. Oye, a mí me gustaría tenerlo él, que estudiara en un colegio como el que yo estudié.
No sé, la vida era diferente. Aquí ni clase media. Todos somos pobres, pobres más pobres. Todos los venezolanos lo vivimos. Así como yo y hay personas que lo viven peor.
We went to the supermarket so we could see for ourselves what the average worker here can buy. They make about $30 a month.
So $1 a piece for each of these apples. Each one of these apples is about 5% of the average worker's monthly wage, just one of these apples. That's pretty crazy.
We were surprised because the supermarket looked fully stocked, but turns out it's missing what people need to survive.
Workers here tell us they don't have are the staples of Venezuelan life. Flour, bread, butter, sugar, and milk.
What everyone here knows is that we are all under the watchful eye of the government-backed militias. But this one woman was so desperate to tell her story, she was willing to risk it all and followed us out.
Pesaba 60 kilos. ¿Cuánto peso ahorita? 47 kilos.
She says that she's lost 30 pounds this year just because there's not enough food.
She wants the world to know, she says, turning directly to the camera.
Oye, que esto lo sepa todo el mundo. Nos estamos muriendo de hambre. Los venezolanos. Esto no es posible. Estamos en una dictadura, pero disfrazada. Todos son testigos. Hay gente que no podemos hablar. ¿Por qué? Porque nos tienen amordazados. Si tú hablas, mandan a los colectivos. A los colectivos a que te agredan, a que te maten.
Our moto taxi drivers suddenly start to tell us, you guys, we're being watched, we got to get out of here. But abruptly breaks off and we hop on those taxis.
It's this repression, this everyday threat of violence mixed with complete failure of the government that is forcing tens of thousands to flee. Venezuela now leads U.S. asylum requests worldwide, leaving China, a country with a population over 4,000 times its size, in second place. In this chaos, the only thing thriving is the black market. Scenes like this play out every day. People illegally buying products intended for the food lines right out of a government warehouse. Black marketeers, like Marco, making a profit. Marco asked us not to show his face or reveal his real name, but he invited us along his route through Caracas to witness this Mad Max economy. His company is contracted by the government to deliver subsidized goods to hospitals, schools, and prisons. Marco tells us the corruption starts at the top. He says the military generals skim about 50% and sell it on the black market. He says people like him then skim another 30% to resell it, and only a fraction is actually delivered to the people. And it's not just food. The death toll here is on the rise due to shortages of medicine and basic supplies. This clinic director tells us she can only treat the most basic of ailments. Headaches, stomach aches, that's it. There are no antibiotics.
Nada.
No hay antibiótico. ¿Desde hace cuánto que no tiene?
Per año y medio más o menos.
Ni un antibiótico.
Ni un antibiótico. Ni siquiera inyectado.
Basic services have ceased to function. A simple infection can be deadly. Those shortages have driven people like Feliciano Reina to crowdsource medications. The Cornell-educated architect has created a medicine chest that distributes over 200 types of meds to 1,700 people, all of it for free.
In a matter of just, let's say, 2 months, we got donations of medicines from Miami, also from Houston, Rome, Madrid. When we get a donation, make a list and then send it out via Twitter. Also, we put lists on Facebook. The government is not admitting that this is happening. They just do not accept that there are these severe problems for people to have access to healthcare in general.
That is why he's doing everything he can to help his fellow citizens.
Our commitment is to be there with the people. This does not stop us from doing what we know is right.
The government has tightened its grip on the most vulnerable. Hospitals are now under military control. We saw armed guards at the doors. Doctors tell us they're not there to protect the patients, but to take control of any donations that might come in and to prevent journalists like us from reporting on what is really going on inside.
In Caracas, people told us that if you want to see how bad it really is, you have to go to the peripheries. Go to cities like Valencia.
So we drove 3 hours out of Caracas, where we were told things were much worse. We were about to discover just how bad it could be. We drove through the mountains from Caracas to Valencia to meet a doctor here determined to show us the horrors that lay inside a hospital controlled by the iron fist of the government.
Driving for more easy access to the hospital.
So if you take us in, it'll be easier for us to get in than if we drive.
Sí, claro.
He and his fellow doctors earnestly and deeply want to get the word out about how bad the situation is.
He doesn't want his face or name shown, but is determined to show us what is going on inside the main hospital for this city of 2 million people.
Your room right here. And you can see dozens of people outside and a lot of trash that's built up. More patients being brought in.
We follow him into the pediatric ward.
Hospitals provide two things. They provide the bed and the doctor. Everything else has to be provided by the patient or their family. And that's what's so incredible. Down to the surgical gowns the doctors wear and even soap to scrub in. Fever? ¿Por qué tiene fever? And then we saw these children. It was already 11 o'clock at night, and all of them were moaning, writhing in their beds. Nurses were just standing there. There was nothing they could do.
All of these children waiting for medication and additional testing.
Little boy called Janikel. She'd been there for over 6 weeks, and it was just heartbreaking.
Little Nayali has been suffering from convulsions for months.
Her family had to provide everything, and obviously she's been here 6 weeks, and that is very expensive. As we're trying to leave, somebody pointed us out. Gracias. And they said, those guys are filming. Another guard closed the door to make sure that nobody left. They demanded our GoPro, iPhone, and started asking us what we were doing. We said, we were doing a story about the suffering of children. Reporting is not a crime in Venezuela, but they can make it a crime, and that's what they did. And after they found my mic pack, they handcuffed us, and that's when I realized that we're not going home.
I was ordered onto the back of a pickup, and they drove me through these darkened streets to the police station.
They demand that I open the phone. I say I'm not going to do it unless I get to call the embassy or ABC News. And then a guy comes in with a dipstick. He's just kind of tapping it against his hand. And I'm thinking, in the middle of the night, what is an officer doing here with a dipstick? And then it dawns on me that this is intimidation.
What followed were hours of questioning, the police denying me a phone call and representation.
After browbeating me and intimidating me, suddenly the tune started to change. I was made to understand that what they really wanted was a bribe.
But then, I'm told that Venezuela's dreaded secret police, the Sabine, would have to be alerted.
So it was very, very scary, and we took it very seriously because they are the most notorious agency in Venezuela. When you think of the Sabine, you think the Stasi, you think the KGB. And one of the things that we underestimate is the degree to which Venezuela as a government views the U.S. as their enemy. It's a Cold War where they are concerned. And they see U.S. spying in every corner. They asked, "Are you CIA?"
For the next 3 days, they questioned me, asked me to open my phone, and trolled my social media history. I was never harmed, but
I was 6 feet away, maybe less, from the bars of what they called the dungeon. It was always a constant reminder of where we could be sent if we fell afoul of these agents.
On the 5th night, I was released. I left with only the clothes on my back. On the plane, someone snapped this picture of me.
Censura! Censura!
I was one of the lucky ones. The Committee to Protect Journalists says hundreds remain behind bars.
Venezuela clearly ranks as one of the most repressive countries in the Western Hemisphere. It's a very difficult situation for the press because any kind of independent reporting in Venezuela on sensitive issues is considered an attack against the government. News coverage is censored.
But that doesn't stop courageous citizens across Venezuela from speaking out. People like Vanessa.
Como venezolana me veo que estamos en un país sin rumbo.
The future is uncertain here. But Vanessa and her family are still holding out hope for change.
Necesitamos que de verdad nos ayuden. Es importante.
Our thanks to Matt Gutman and his team for their extraordinary reporting.
The country with the biggest oil reserves in the world is in economic meltdown. Venezuelans queue for hours for bread. The sick can't get the medicines they need. Violent crime is thriving in the chaos. Caracas is now the world's most dangerous capital.
Hello, Stephen. This is Hugo.
Hugo Chavez's socialist revolution has lost its charismatic leader, but not yet its grip on power. Opposition to Chavez's successor, Nicolas Maduro, is mobilizing. The National Assembly is at war with the government. Venezuela is on the brink of a terrifying descent into darkness. Can anyone pull it back from the brink? Foreign journalists are rarely welcome in Venezuela, so we charter a small plane to the country's Caribbean island of Margarita, where overseas visitors can still slip in with little fuss. This used to be a buzzing, prosperous tourist town. Now the flow of people, money and jobs has dried up. Many local businesses have closed down. More are likely to follow. The beaches haven't lost their allure, but Venezuela has. A broken economy, inflation spiraling beyond 1,000%, and violent crime have tainted even these shores. This has to be one of the most beautiful beaches I have ever seen, and even a decade ago it would have been packed with tourists from Europe, from Latin America and the United States too. But, well, today you can see there is barely a soul here. I have this little piece of paradise all to myself. For you, it means there's nothing to do.
Yeah, it's nothing to do. I'm alone here.
What do you do all day? Do you read a book or...?
Yeah, of course I read a book and try to walk around. Yeah.
Why do you think there's nobody here?
I think the economy is one of the big problems here, but it's gonna change, I think so. We hope so.
Venezuela despierta con fiesta al amanecer.
From Margarita, we head to Caracas, home to 5 million people, the epicenter of Venezuela's economic meltdown. First appearances can be deceptive. Vast oil wealth, even though mostly squandered, has created a veneer of normality. But beneath the surface, the prolonged slump in oil prices means the government is now drowning in debt without the money to import basic consumer supplies. Every day, tens of thousands of Caracas residents spend all day in a desperate search for food. Bread is almost impossible to find. Most bakeries have shut as wheat imports have dried up. Nappies, baby milk, a whole shopping list of essentials supposedly subsidized by the government to make them affordable are missing from supermarket shelves. On the black market, they cost more than the average monthly wage. Millions of Venezuelans are queuing, not working. Caracas is encircled by sprawling slums, barrios, which cling to the hills. Antimano is home to a couple of 100,000 people hit hard by the shortages and rampant inflation. I'm in one of the jeeps which specializes in transporting people up and down the mountain. And the principle here in the slum is pretty straightforward. The higher up the hill you live, well, the poorer you are. The irony here in Caracas is that the poor have some of the best views, and much of the housing here really isn't too bad. Hugo Chavez poured an awful lot of money into the slums like this, but the problem for people living here right now is simply making enough money to eat. Leo and Andres Guerrero have 3 daughters. Both of them work, but they're still struggling to survive. Give me the reality of life today living here.
Bueno, yo trabajo en mototaxi, no me alcanza para comprar esas cosas, por lo menos yo trabajo y lo que hago diario es para medio comer, pues, porque todo está caro, no se encuentra nada y todo hay que comprarlo bachaqueado, pues. Y por lo menos a veces para comprar pan hay que calarse 3-4 horas. Y a veces ni uno llega y se acaba.
You talk about despair, Leo, but are you also angry?
Sí, me da rabia, me desespera, me estresa. Vivo estresado, obstinado por la broma, porque es un desespero, porque a veces no corría para comprar la comida y las cosas.
You have a picture of Hugo Chavez and Nicolás Maduro here in the house. Do you still believe in the revolution?
No, yo no creo ya en ninguno. Por lo menos, bueno, ya Chávez está muerto, pero Maduro yo no creo en nada. Siempre se anda equivocando, tiene muchos errores en hablar. Y cada palabra que él dice no me convence. No creo en ninguna de esas posiciones, para nada.
Thanks to the highest inflation rate in the world, the value of the bolivar has collapsed. The US dollar is king. Venezuela has 3 exchange rates. The strictest official one is 10 bolivars to the dollar. But out on the street, the black market rate is 4,000 to 1 greenback, a reality that fuels inequality and crime. Buenas tardes, Carlos. I need to change money. Thank you for coming. Okay, so what have we got?
100.
100. 200. 500 US dollars generates a mini mountain of bolivars. So Carlos, explain to me how the currency black market works in Caracas.
Más que todo por teléfono, con clientes, transferencia bancaria. Yo voy directamente a los clientes, ellos me llaman, busco, les llevo, así como hice para acá. ¿Verdad? Llamaron y vine directamente a ustedes. Cuando es vía transferencia, ¿verdad? Pago 100, 200 puntos menos de la página que está en la página, ¿verdad? Cuando en efectivo, se paga mucho más bajo.
Carlos, do you feel like a criminal? Because this is the black market. It's illegal. There is an official rate for exchanging dollars for bolivars, and you're giving a black market rate. You are a criminal.
No debería sentirme como un criminal porque no ha cometido ningún delito. ¿Verdad? El caso que tú compres en el mercado negro, ¿verdad? No es ser un criminal, sí tiene que estar uno pendiente, ¿verdad? Con quién trabaja. ¿Verdad? Por lo menos yo trabajo mucho con clientes, personas serias. Entonces uno piensa, sabe a quién la va a comprar también, porque hay mucha gente que te vende, ¿verdad? Como te puede dar una cosa falsa, como otro legal.
Una moto para cometer un secuestro express se lleva una sorpresa.
In Caracas, kidnapping has become an epidemic. The victims no longer have to be rich, they just need a family capable of scraping together a couple of $1,000s. I made contact with a kidnapped gang who led me deep into their barrio. What followed was one of the more uncomfortable encounters of my life. When you take someone, what do you do with them? Where do you take them and how long do you hold them?
Bueno, eso depende la persona cuando acceden rápidamente a pagar el rescate que nosotros pedimos. Si la persona no cancela en el momento, no le entregamos. Podemos pasar un periodo máximo de una semana y media, 2 semanas. Si no vemos respuesta de la persona, lo desaparecemos.
So you mean if the family cannot pay or will not pay, you will kill them?
Nosotros pedimos una suma exagerada, una suma de 5 millones de bolívares por personas secuestradas y siempre terminan cancelándolo. Mientras menos baja, mejor todavía. Y bueno, los que se rehusan a pagar la cantidad, desaparecemos, como te había mencionado.
So was it not possible for you to make a good life for yourselves in the legal world?
A manera de cómo mis hermanos no podían comer, de no vestirse, eso hace que uno se meta en esta vida. El buscar el dinero más fácil para ayudar a mi familia, eso es lo que nos hace meter en esta vida. Por eso yo estoy metido en esto desde pequeño, para ayudar a mi madre y a mis hermanas a que salgan adelante y no tengan la vida que yo estoy viviendo.
Hello, Stephen. This is Hugo.
I met Hugo Chavez in Caracas 7 years ago. Chavez was hated in Washington for his leftist, anti-American populism, but his appeal to Venezuela's poor was real. Many believed in his socialist revolution. High oil prices allowed him to spend many billions on subsidies and social programs. He won elections and even beat off an attempted coup. In 2013, he died. Then the oil price started to tumble, a double whammy which was disastrous for the Chavismo movement. His successor, Nicolás Maduro, a former bus driver, lacks charisma and is blamed for disastrous economic mismanagement. The opposition won a decisive victory in the last National Assembly elections. Maduro's government recently responded with draconian new rules requiring all opposition parties to register thousands of supporters to be afforded legal status. If the intention was to strangle dissent, it's backfired.
These people have been lining up for hours in order to register their support for one of the opposition political parties, and it's quite clear talking to them that however long it takes, they will stay. They are determined to have their voices heard.
Why don't they let us have elections?
They
just put obstacles and more obstacles and more obstacles. That's why we have to do all this is for. And many people that are here are poor too. And I wasn't poor, but now I'm poor.
But Venezuela's opposition is far from united. There's a multitude of competing parties, egos and agendas, and an age-old problem. Can parties rooted in the upper and middle classes win over the poor? The biggest threat to Chavismo right now doesn't come from the condemnation of long-standing political opponents, but from the alienation of core supporters. We travel deep into the countryside in Barlovento to hear from farmers impoverished by a collapsed economy.
ya no hay estas haciendas que están deterioradas por el tiempo que tienen sin trabajarlas.
State-controlled crop prices have lagged way behind inflation, so farmers have taken to a subsistence, hand-to-mouth existence.
El cacao es el mejor. Aquí hay 7 clases de cacao. Vean.
Ah, yeah.
Un cacao bueno, mire.
This is the cocoa bean. It needs to be dried, needs to be prepared, but this is your basic ingredient for chocolate. Rodolfo, given the state of the economy here out in the countryside, do you see any future here for you and your family?
De parte del gobierno no vemos futuro. Entre más días las cosas se destruyen. Ahí vemos, o sea, el gobierno mismo, el mismo gobierno ha destruido a Venezuela.
Were you a Chavez supporter in the old days? And how do you feel about President Maduro today?
Bueno, nosotros casi todos éramos chavistas, casi todos. Ahorita queda un hermano mío que es el que apoya el gobierno, bueno, porque estaba comiendo del gobierno, pero ahora lo votaron, ahora él también dice que no quiere nada con la revolución, pero no es la revolución, es la mafia que es la que está mandando ahorita, o sea, el poder. Ahorita no está mandando ningún gobierno, ahorita lo mandan es a él, ¿me entiende? Porque si él mandara y supiera mandar, el país no estuviera así.
In the last 2 weeks, Venezuela has been rocked by a series of anti-government demonstrations and sporadic violent clashes between protesters and police. The spark was the government's short-lived decision to abolish the powers of the opposition-dominated National Assembly. That decision was reversed, but new anger was stirred when one of the most prominent opposition leaders, Enrique Capriles, was banned from politics. The opposition is torn, undecided whether resistance to Maduro's government should be focused in the political arena or on the streets. They learned a painful lesson back in 2014. Then the radicals, led by this man, Leopoldo Lopez, took to the streets demanding the immediate salida, or exit, of Maduro. The violence that followed killed more than 40. Lopez was convicted of incitement and sentenced to 14 years in prison. He is Venezuela's highest profile political prisoner. I head to the Ramo Verde military prison with Lopez's mother, Antonieta. She tirelessly campaigns for her son's release. Do you think the people of Venezuela really care about Leopoldo and his situation?
You know, that's a very interesting question because when you have a country that it has no food, it has the highest inflation in the whole continent, it has 28,000 people who die every year because of delinquency. It's to care about a political prisoner, it's difficult, but Leopoldo's in their minds.
See, the government would say that Leopoldo Lopez is in prison because he refused to play the political game. He refused to accept that there is a democratic process, and he demanded change through street and popular action, and that's why in the end a court of law convicted him of incitement, because he was not being constitutional. He was trying to subvert Venezuela's political system.
He was calling people to go to the streets to protest. That's a constitutional right of the Venezuelans.
I'm just wondering whether you think he was just going too far.
No, I don't think he was. Leopoldo has never been a radical. Leopoldo is a strong leader. I think he's a charismatic leader. People follow him. And that's what he was doing, calling to the streets, but never in a radical, never in a violent way.
Now, we are about 300 meters away from Leopoldo's cell. Can you communicate with him from here?
Well, maybe I'll try to say hello to him.
Have you done that before?
Yes, I have.
And he can hear you?
And he can hear me. Estamos aquí, Leo. Salúdame.
He said, hello, how are you?
Bien, Leo, bien. ¿Cómo estás tú? Bien, bien. Que si tienes un mensaje para mis acompañantes. Fuerza y fe. Force and faith.
And he is shouting very strong.
Very strongly.
But you hear the whistles? The guards are trying to drown out the voice with the whistles. I don't know if you can hear all of this, but his voice, Leopoldo Lopez's voice, is coming across very clearly. It's a 300-meter distance from the prison tower where he's being held, but we can hear his voice so strong, so clear. And for you, this must be quite moving, quite emotional to hear your son's voice like this.
For us, being having such a limited opportunity of having our voice out internationally, and to have you here, that you can see, that you can feel, it's very important.
Of course.
It's worth taking the message out. And you, as a witness of what's his whole confinement.
Where do you find your strength from?
From him. When you listen to that cause, to those messages, and we're out here, well, this is what we have to do. We have to put the best of our mind, experience, emotions, physical strength to go on with this. Look at them. Look at the guards.
Well, a jeep has just come out of the prison.
See, maybe they'll take your camera.
Maybe they want to talk to us. This was the moment our filming in Venezuela came to an abrupt end. As the military police approached us from the prison, we attempted to leave. We managed to conceal the camera in our car, but our cover was blown.
Yayan Orreali es un periodista de investigación y es especializado en el arte oscuro de la filmación secreta, y junto a Stephen Sakur desarrollan un programa de entrevistas que generan polémicas al estilo Hartal.
Within hours, state media accused Hard Talk of illegally entering the country and filming in a prohibited area. Producer-director Ian O'Reilly was detained and interrogated by police intelligence for 24 hours before being deported. I slipped out of the country the next day. Venezuela's socialist revolution is on the ropes. The authorities don't want to face questions from foreign journalists, but there can be no escaping the scale of the mess they're in. Back at the BBC in London, I meet Temir Porras, a former close advisor to both Chavez and Maduro.
Would it be fair to say that the lifeblood of the Venezuelan socialist revolution really drained away with the death of Hugo Chavez?
Definitely the passing of President Hugo Chavez created a great challenge for Chavismo and for socialism, not only in Venezuela, also in the region.
Are you personally still a believer in Chavismo?
Oh yes. Yes, absolutely.
How can you be when you look at the state of your country today?
The Chavista cycle has been mostly a success. For the last 3 years, the country has been hit by both a terrible economic crisis and a political crisis. And I believe that, you know, decision makers today from the government and opposition are responsible for the situation of the country. But what I do not agree with is this view that the Chavismo is a failure, that the left is not viable in Latin America, and that now we should all espouse, you know, conservative, free market oriented policies.
You worked as a senior advisor to Chavez. You, for a short while, were a very senior advisor to Maduro. You also you were the boss of the Sovereign Wealth Fund. So you are better placed than almost anybody to explain to me how come Venezuela is steadily going bust when you have had hundreds of billions of dollars in oil revenues.
I was the head of the Sovereign Fund for a very short period of time, and I was, you know, sent out of government, right? It was a very short period of time.
But can you answer me the question? Because a lot of Venezuelans think the answer to my question is corruption, total mismanagement of the economy, absolutely failed governance.
Okay. One thing, first, where has the money gone? Come on. Venezuela experienced economic growth, you know, for most of the Chavista period and for most of the President Chavez's cycle. The money went, for the first time in Venezuela's history, the Venezuelan people, through, you know, its political system, got control over the oil rent. And that oil rent was invested, heavily invested, in education, in healthcare, in housing.
The hospitals can't even afford medicines today.
But I mean, you know as well as me, I mean, you don't ignore it. Income, one thing is what you can do, what you have invested already in the country, but you need a flow, you know, to sustain that model. And the country has gone, again, through a very, very difficult economic crisis and doesn't have the means to keep, you know, sustaining that I mean.
So what you're saying is that all of the money spent during the Chavista years was spent in a way that was not building a sustainable economy.
No,
because
absolutely
it patently is not sustainable.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I say that when you have an external shock, like my country suffered, you need to adapt. You need to adapt your policy. Probably the policy set that you had when the oil price was at $100 is not exactly the same policy set that you need today. And that's what has happened. I mean, things in the policy making, in the economic policy, haven't changed and haven't adapted to the new situation, and that is strangling the Venezuelan economy.
Venezuela should be the richest country in Latin America. Instead, it's the most chaotic, the most gratuitously mismanaged. Its people have been wearied by the struggle to survive, and it's hard to see where salvation is coming from.
It's an extraordinary sight. Long lines of desperate Venezuelans trying to get rid of their 100 Bolivar bills. The Bolivar is the Venezuelan currency. Some people carrying travel bags stuffed with packs of bills. This is chaos, this man said. If you go to banks, you'll see people bringing in bills in cardboard boxes to exchange them because they're worthless. They're doing it because last Sunday, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro ordered the 100 Bolivar bill discontinued. State-run media said it would be replaced with coins of the same value, but the government has yet to distribute them. Now consumers are stuck. Banks no longer accept the bills, but ATMs are still dispensing them because the replacements haven't arrived. This woman says many businesses also no longer accept the 100 Bolivar bill, so consumers like her have to use their credit cards to make purchases. It's just one more blow to the Venezuelan economy, which has been sputtering over the last few years. Inflation is expected to rise an estimated 470% this year, according to the International Monetary Fund. Next year, the IMF says it may rise to more than 1,600%. The Venezuelan currency lost 55% of its value just in November. Venezuelan authorities had announced they would roll out 500 Bolivar bills this week. At the highest official exchange rate, 500 Bolivars are worth 75 US cents. All you can buy with a 500 Bolivar bill, this man says, is a piece of bread, and you will still be short by 50 Bolivars. Economists say the bottom line is that the Venezuelan economy is in tatters, and the government has failed so far to find a solution.
This accumulated inflation is very, very aggressive and reflects the monetary policy failure and steps taken to reduce inflation by both the Chavez government and also the current president, Maduro.
The government says it will make available bills of much higher denominations, up to 20,000 bolivars soon. In the meantime, people are left without answers and wondering if their cash is now worthless. Rafael Romo, CNN.